Hello, Harvard graduate students. My name is Peter Choi, and I am the graduate student body president representing the Harvard Graduate Council, the student government organization representing 15,000 graduate students at Harvard's 12 graduate and professional schools. I'm excited to introduce our fall 2021 GradFest guest speaker today. Dr. Sherri Ann Charleston serves as our first Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Harvard. She is one of the nation's leaders in diversity and higher education and assumed her role in August 2020. She has expertise in affirmative action, Title IX, and Americans with Disability Act enforcement and compliance. In 2019, Diverse Issues in Higher Education magazine named her as one of the top 35 women in higher education. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Charleston.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sherri Ann Charleston, and I'm the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer here at Harvard University. And it's really my privilege to be with you at GradFest 2021. Thank you to the organizers for inviting me. And thank you, Peter, for being willing to introduce me. It's really a privilege to be with you all this evening, even if we're not able to do it in person, because it's such an important time as we think about, as the theme says, reimagining what our life is like on campus. I really wish we had an opportunity to do it together. But we're still in community, even if we're in community asynchronously or virtually. And so I look forward to engaging with each of you at some point on campus. And certainly if you see me in my office in the Smith Campus Center, or if you see me walking across campus, I really hope that you'll stop me and say hello, because that would mean the absolute world to me. So I've been asked to say a few words about my own journey through graduate school. I'm laughing because some people would say that I'm a multiple graduate school survivor, having traversed through a master's program, a PhD program, and then eventually to go on to get my law degree. And so supporting graduate students and thinking about how to help you with the transition has been really one of the things that I've been most passionate about. So I'm going to hopefully share a few thoughts about my own journey and about, paths and paths not taken. And then hopefully I can share a few nuggets that will help guide you along the way as you think about your own career and your own career path. So I am going to share my screen with you all and talk a little bit about my background and who I am. So I'm born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, as many of you know. I have a bachelor's at Columbia and then went on to the University of Michigan to get my PhD in history. And the story of how I actually arrived at the decision that I wanted to study history is in and of itself a sort of an interesting one. Many of you in the audience may be from schools where there was a Mellon program or a McNair program. I was a Mellon, at that point, Mellon Mays Fellow. And I was trying to think about whether I wanted to go to graduate school or whether I wanted to go to law school. And I was really interested in African-American self-determination coming out of the Civil War. I was really interested in how my own grandparents, not the ones pictured here, but my grandmother's mother, who's pictured on the phone, her and my grandfather had amassed a fairly sizable plot of land in Mississippi, and had done so at a point in time when that would have certainly been particularly difficult. And so I was really interested in the process of land ownership. I was really interested in citizenship, questions of citizenship. And for me, because I had been studying at Columbia, where there was such a strength in the faculty around Reconstruction with Eric Foner and the Civil War with Barbara Fields, that I was really interested in the post-Civil War Reconstruction era. I also have a photo here of my great grandparents on my grandfather's side, Cicero and Rena Curry. They are actually the grandparents of my grandfather, and they're my oldest known ancestors. that we have photos of. And I share this because I was really interested in thinking about my own family history and the way that it intertwined with US history. And I was fascinated by this. And so I went to graduate school, and I'll just share with you all briefly, because people ask me, okay, well, you started interested in late 19th to early 20th century history, and then you started working, or you started interested in post-Civil War history, and then you became interested in late 19th, early 20th century history. And that's a sort of an interesting story in and of itself, because I was really working with a group of faculty who were really interested in the 1890s. And as good advisors do, they sort of push you in a different direction and ask you different questions. And so, long story short, I began working with the Law and Slavery and Freedom Project, and it was comprised of historians, but also people who were faculty in the law school. And I started really thinking that if I wanted to be a better historian, I needed to go to law school. And so I went to law school as I was wrapping up my dissertation. Do not recommend that particular route. I was sharing with the organizers that as I was thinking about whether I wanted to go on to law school, I was talking to one of my faculty advisors, Martha Jones, who's a fantastic historian, and she asked me tough questions. She's also an attorney, and as I was sitting on the side of the road one day having a phone call with her, I was actually getting ready to go into my graduate student women's support therapy group. And I was talking to her on the phone, and I was saying, I was talking about this question of whether I was going to go on to graduate school or whether I was going to pursue some faculty opportunities that I had. And she said to me, don't you want to like get a job? Are you sure you don't want to get a job? And ultimately, I was able to convince her, no, I think this is really what I want to do. And so when I got to my defense, we talked about it, and she told my community, she said, I asked her the tough questions. She really wants to go on to law school. So I share those stories because, all of us find our pathway to graduate school in really interesting and distinct and different ways. And oftentimes along the way, we have to make decisions about what we think is best for our own career paths. And I share this, also because graduate school is never a linear process. And, for me, I was always interested not only in pursuing, my academic work, but I was always interested in mentoring and thinking about how I support student access. And so you see me pictured here with student organizations that I've worked with. I was a mentor for Posse while I was in graduate school. And then after that, that actually led into the second picture. So in the picture all the way to the far side where there's a group of students with stoles. Those are my Posse scholars. And so I was a mentor while I was in law school, and that's many of them as they were graduating. And then several years later, I would go on to be assistant vice provost at the same institution at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And there I am with a group of first wave scholars. And eventually I would have oversight for the Posse program, First Wave Scholarship Program, and other programs as well. But it was really that experience of working with Posse as a graduate student, ironically, that gave me the ability to transition when I eventually took the assistant vice provost role to be able to do the work of working with those programs in an oversight capacity. So I'll stop. I won't share my screen too much longer so that you all aren't just looking at slides. But I really just want to highlight one really important point, which is if someone asked me when I was in graduate school, did I think that in 2021, this is where I would be? I would say no. And that's because it's very difficult sometimes to see which way you're going. When I used to advise students who are thinking about law school, I had a beautiful window in my office, and there was a tree. It was a ground floor office, and there was a tree outside. And when you looked at the tree, all you could really see is the trunk because it was really high, and the branches really began after the ceiling of the window. And I would say to my students, I said, it's really unfair in many ways. You've gone your whole life with your path being planned out for you. And then when you get to college, all of a sudden people tell you, just like that tree, keep going up, 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 up. You get to college and all of a sudden the branches start to diverge and you say, I don't know which way to go. And people say to you, well, you just pick one. And that's easier said than done, because many of us have never had to pick that for ourselves. And so I would say to students, it's really hard when you're looking up at the tree from the bottom, because all you see is all the branches going in all the different directions. What you can't see is the perspective that you see from the top, which is that all the branches are going in the same direction. So literally the goal is to hang on to the branch. And even if you take one and you think it's going to take you in the wrong path, trust that all of them are headed in the same direction, which is towards the sun. And so I use that sometimes as a metaphor for life, because many of us will find on our graduate school journeys that we just take, we're trying to figure it out. And even afterwards, when we pursue our faculty positions or whatever we decide to do, and we're often restricted and constricted with the concern that we'll take the wrong path. But as long as you stay on the branch, you actually never take the wrong path. So I thought I would leave you with a few of my tips for surviving graduate school, which if anybody has ever had a conversation with me, you have probably heard me say some version of this at some point. So the first tip: remember that graduate school is the raft, not the shore. And what I mean by that is that graduate school, because it's such a wonderful time, you can get lulled. You can just sort of go along. And even if it's a terrible time, there's a way that you're just not sure what's going to happen on the other side. And so it can feel safer to stay in that liminal space than it can to actually get off of the raft. But remember, graduate school is what gets you to where you want to go. And so it's your responsibility to take charge of that experience and steer your way to the shore. The second thing is, do something every day on your dissertation when you get to that space. I cannot tell you how many times that I've finished a day of writing and not wanted to come back to it. And it really taught me a powerful lesson, which is try to end on a high note. But then secondly, this is a process of you doing the work over the long haul. So make sure you're doing something on your dissertation every day, whether it's fixing a footnote, those footnotes, especially the ones that situate you in the field, especially if you're a historian, or if you're working on, let's say, a law review, if you're working on a law review article, for example, and you're on one of the reviews, figuring out how to work on those footnotes is an incredible skill, and it's something that can serve you well. Whether you're working on a dissertation, a master's thesis, it doesn't really matter. The principle is the same. Do something towards completion of your work every day. The third thing is take advantage of mentors and make sure your mentors have specific purposes. Over my life, I have amassed a wonderful array of mentors. I will tell you, they all do not mentor me on the same things. I go to some people for career advice. I go to others for personal advice. I go to others to think about how I want to pursue certain opportunities relative to my own career. So I would say make sure you have a wide array of mentors, and don't discount peer mentors. Some of the best people that I had an opportunity to work with in graduate school who helped me along the way were my peers, were students who were just 1 or 2 years ahead of me. They often helped me navigate my mentors or my advisors. So when my advisors would say something that would just kind of throw me into a tailspin, they could help me contextualize it and understand it, so I would know how not to take it personally. The fourth thing is, remember what the dissertation is and is not. When I was in graduate school, I had a sign on my wall that I downloaded from somewhere, and it said something along the lines of, the dissertation is not a magnum opus. The dissertation is not the final word. The dissertation is not your masterpiece. The dissertation is only and will always only be a demonstration of your ability to conduct original research, period. Don't try to be great. Just be great. Don't try, just do it. Finally, live the life that you want to live now. So when I was in graduate school, I was doing a lot of other things. When I was in law school, I was a mentor for Posse, as I mentioned. I worked for other student access programs. And really, it's that work that has shaped and defined the rest of my career. I don't know that I knew it then, but don't be afraid to do the things that you need to do or that you want to do, because you never know how they're leading you to a greater end. So I will stop there, but just say it's really been a pleasure to be with you all today and to share these thoughts. And I just want to, just remind you that you have a community of people here who are pulling for you and who are rooting for you. Harvard is better because you're here. We need your brilliance. We need the discoveries you'll make. And so we're here to support you as well. So thank you so much for having me, and have a wonderful rest of the day.